order this April 7, 2020 meeting of the Knox County Election Commission. All members present in person except for Ms. Denise. She is here telephonically, video, and by video. David, can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
Okay. If at any time you wish to be heard, as I cannot see you because my back is to you, one of the other commissioners will let me know. We all agree to do that. All right. We're here today for a very limited purpose, but first things first, I thank the members of the public that have showed up and it's risk of their health. Be here. Mr. Davis and that guard of duty members considering to sign up for public hearing.
Sir. No, sir. And I would add too that any comments that anybody wanted to make about Mr. Davis that were sent to the Election Central email site were forwarded to each of you, and that all the remarks that I saw were all positive and in support of Mr. Davis to be appointed to fill the remainder of my term.
And after just to cover all our bases before we start the hearing proper, I would say that we are meeting here today electronic meetings and it will need to come officially determined, but to say for the record that it's the necessity of this meeting by electronic meetings to protect public health, safety, and welfare in light of the coronavirus. And that this body includes this determination for the statement in the minutes of this commission. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we ratify your statement that this meeting is necessary. It is necessary to hold this meeting by electronic means due to the current health situation of the coronavirus.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. First order of business, consideration of the approval of the minutes of the March 23, 2020 meeting. Pursuant to the Development Code section, do I have such a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. Have a motion and second. All those in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Brooks. I do note that there's an attachment there.
Hearing.
I do note that that's an attachment. We do have a handwritten letter of resignation from the administrator, Mr. Rogers. Cameron, can you sign that? I'll ask Mr. Davis to enter that into the record. Can you hear me, sir?
You can talk a little closer to the mic.
What's your name?
Rob
Rob what?
Link.
L-I-N-K?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lane. Next order of business be public forum. Mr. Davis.
I'm signed up, sir.
All right. Being an absence of people wishing to participate in the public forum, if I could have Exhibit A to this meeting back first. Before. Our last meeting, Mr. Rogers tendered his resignation effective May 30, 2020. I have known Mr. Rogers for a very long time, and I do appreciate it and voice such appreciation at the last meeting. Not a day goes by when I sit in this chair, and I'm not thankful that Clifford Rogers is the administrator of elections of Knox County and is my friend. When he says something, I take him at his word. If he recommends something, I listen to that recommendation. And as part and parcel of those thoughts, and through my association with him, and seeing what he has done and how he has built this commission the status and to level of achievement that it has achieved. I think I'm the only one who was, well, Henry, you were here for the last administration for a short bit of time. I'm extremely proud of what Mr. Rogers has done with the assistance of Mr. Davis. But for
Chris, I've got a text from people wanting you to speak louder into the mic.
never heard anybody tell me to talk louder, but I will. I'm going to read to you his recommendation. Chris has now been here for almost 7 years. I'm quoting from the minutes of our last meeting. I can tell you with absolute certainty that he can do everything which I do, plus a number of things I cannot. Additionally, keep in mind that Chris has served as the Director of Public Relations and Marketing for the American Red Cross for 13 years, and then as its Executive Director for 2 years. No one in Knox County is better prepared to step in as Administrator of Elections than is Chris Davis. So I suggest that you do what Putnam County did by replacing its AOE with its assistant AOE. Simply replace me with Chris when I retire in May. Is that your suggestion, Mr. Rogers?
That's my strong recommendation. And quite frankly, I can't see really any other prudent course of action for you all to take, with all due respect to any other people that might think they could possibly do that job, this job, and at the same time the coronavirus is taking place. So anyway, that's I'll just make it short and sweet. That's where I am on it, and I ain't about to change my mind.
All right. As chair, I could call for a vote, but out of an abundance of caution, I'm going to let members of the commission, if they wish, comment. Does anyone wish to comment on Mr. Rogers' I guess his recommendation? And does anyone wish to make their own statement? And I'll go from my right to my left. Anna, do you have anything to add or a question?
I don't think it's a question. Obviously, I think we said last time that the integrity that Mr. Rogers has operated the office with is what we're looking to replicate moving forward. And so with his strong recommendation and his assurance that you can do everything that he can do, as well as some things that he can't do, I feel very comfortable with that. I think for people that might be watching from home or who may watch this later, I would love to hear for their benefit as well as ours, just kind of how you came to this work and why you're passionate about ensuring that democracy happens in our county and in an efficient and effective way.
Go ahead.
Well, as I've told a lot of people over the last few weeks, when I was growing up, government and civics were always my favorite subjects. Those were what I enjoyed, and the election process and the political process is something I've always kind of had an eye on. And then back in 2012, I was working at UT, and a layoff was imminent. It was not a firing; it was a layoff. They were going to close our department. So I started looking around different courses of employment, and just happened upon an opportunity to be an election worker. It's like we have 700 other election workers every election. And I called Brian Hall back in January 2012, and I said, I'd like to be a poll worker. He said, okay, we got me started up. And I worked the presidential election of 2012. And for those of you who have seen my voting record, you'll know that's the only election I have missed in the last, probably since 2004 or 5, 6, something like that. And it was because I planned on voting. I was all excited about being a poll worker. So I was going to vote election day at Rocky Hill, because I'd always been an early voter for about 4 or 5 years before that. It turns out that on the Sunday before the Tuesday, Brian Hall called me up and said, hey, I got a pinch. I need you to work at Beard Middle. No problem, Brian, be glad to. I get there on election morning. I realize I never got to vote in this election. Pretty embarrassing. But nonetheless, I worked that March election. They didn't need me in August, but I worked that November presidential election. And actually, ironically, I've been laid off on Halloween. I was about 6 days unemployed when we conducted that November 2012 election. I think you were here till about 5 in the morning, I was later here, something like that.
5:30.
5:30, just for the record. And then, you know, as luck would have it, as I was looking for a job, the prior assistant administrator had resigned. Saw an ad, was one of, I think, 44 people who applied and 11 who interviewed. I remember May 17, 2013, I sat down with Cliff Rogers and we talked for probably about an hour and 45 minutes, I guess, right up there in your office. And talked soup to nuts, the election process. I compared my work at the Red Cross to what I envisioned would be going on at the Election Commission. And here we are almost 7 years later. It's a little bit too close for comfort, to be quite honest, given the coronavirus that we're facing. But ultimately, I feel like, you know, I've been blessed because Cliff took a chance on me. He had 44 people who applied. He had 11 people who interviewed. I think, you correct me if I'm wrong, I think there were 3 attorneys in that group. But we clicked, we hit it off. And I feel like every day since then, for almost 7 years now, I feel like I'm on a job now. Because I'm ultimately, I want to show Cliff that the confidence that he had in me was, you know, was well, you know, well placed. And so it's one of those things that, you know, I love the process. I love everything about it. And it's one of those things, sometimes it gets a little bit difficult. Cliff would, I'm sure, would say this because it gets very, people want to make what we do very partisan. And we're just trying to run elections. And we understand that that's the nature of the beast sometimes, but nonetheless, we're going to follow the law. We're going to do what's right. Sometimes that's going to make people a little unhappy. You can read our emails, you can listen to our phone calls. I think Cliff would attest to that. But ultimately, we're there to make sure, and I read this somewhere, and I know it sounds a little cheesy, but we are the gatekeepers of democracy. We're literally how your officials get elected. And we don't, I speak for myself, I speak for Deborah, I speak for our 7 full-time staff members who have a combined 155 years of election experience. We don't take that lightly. And it's, frankly, it's love coming to work every day. And I don't know in my 26 years of working full-time in the world that I can always say that. And granted, there are hard days, and I can tell you, the next 7 months there's going to be a lot of hard days. But I still love coming to work every day. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Anything else? Mr. Bowman? Mr. Davis, if you would, for the record, sort of explain your involvement in the procurement process for the new election system. But not only are you having to gear up for what is the busiest election season this office faces every 4 years, but you're also going to be doing it in the midst of the rollout of a new voting system. So talk to us about how familiar you are with that system and your involvement in the procurement process.
My involvement in the procurement process early on, you know, and I know we've talked about this before in meetings, but even after March of 16, we knew we needed a new system because we had all of those delegates on the ballot. And so we started first looking at a hybrid system. And then we looked at the VVPAT, the voter verified paper audit trail. And then as we progressed, we decided that we needed to at least look at the option of an all paper ballot system. So we put out bids sometime late last year, I guess September. Does that sound about right? Cliff designated me as one of the 2 Republicans. We also had 2 Democrats, and then someone from purchasing. Made up the 5 people who picked the voting system. But ultimately, we graded systems from HART, ES&S, from Dominion, and from Adkins, I believe it was. And the 5 of us together combined came up with the HART all-paper system, which literally will be delivered tomorrow to Knox County. Just as an FYI, all of the old stuff literally was shipped out yesterday. The new stuff literally arrives 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Right now, we have no voting equipment in Knox County, but that was my role in the process, and I feel very comfortable with that system.
How many labor hours do you think you have in that process?
100 plus. I don't know. It'd be hard without going back and looking at my calendar. I would easily say 100 plus because we read all of those proposals multiple times. You know, would bounce questions off of the folks at HART and at ES&S. We went and saw, Cliff, you may have a better number, but I would say a minimum of 15 to 20 demonstrations from 4 vendors, along with all the different phone calls we would get from vendors at the state meetings, that type of thing.
You feel comfortable with your knowledge of the system, how it operates, and how we need to roll it out to the voters in Knox County?
I think I do.
Well, I've known Mr. Davis and his family for a long time. He has high integrity, good judgment, very, very smart. Whenever I have a question about the details of an election process, Chris is one of my go-to people to answer those questions, and he always hits it right on the money. He knows the law, he knows the process, he knows our procedures. I've watched him interact with our election workers. He has their respect, and he respects them because he's been in the trenches with them. And I certainly would never turn my back on a recommendation from Cliff Rogers, who's one of the greatest public servants I've ever met. Thank you, Mr.
Mr. Brooks.
I don't have anything right now.
Ms. Lucy, do you have anything?
Yes, can you all hear me?
Sure we can.
Well, thank you to Administrator Rogers. I think I expressed that in the last meeting, but thank you again. And Mr. Davis, thank you for the role you've played in showing how excellent Administrator Rogers has been at his job and being fair and executing his office with a tremendous amount of professionalism. And it's my sense that that's sort of like leaders, tone from the top. The leader sets the tone for an organization. And I feel like Mr. Rogers has set that tone. And probably part of the reason he's been so good at the job is in part due to your support as assistant administrator. And so my question is, as we're all speaking to the turmoil or the difficulty or the change that's happening when we're losing an experienced administrator and you're coming on board with excellent experience of your own. But what do you plan on doing in terms of filling the position of assistant administrator so that the office, which is going to experience a lot of changes where the office will have to react quickly? How do you plan on rolling that out? What are your plans on staffing up and those kinds of things as it relates to somebody to help you in your role if you get the job?
Well, I think one of the, as we've talked previously, one of the big things that I think is crucial right now, because I think you would agree, I think all of you would agree, we have a very, very busy 7 months ahead of us. Extremely busy. We have the biggest election. Well, I think it'll be the biggest election, frankly, in the history of Knox County. We have a brand new paper system, and I've told multiple people we're voting paper for the first time in multiple generations, certainly in decades. And then on top of that, we have all the unknowns with the coronavirus. Ultimately, I'm looking for someone in the short term who can hit the ground running, who has I would feel probably most comfortable. It's one of those, you've seen job placements where you say experience preferred. I'm looking for someone who can hit the ground running, because I'll be honest with you, this may come off as being a braggart, but I consider myself very good at what I do, but it took me a while. Cliff hired me I remember he called me June the 8th, I think June the 7th of 2013. I started on June the 11th, and it took me a good year plus to get where I really felt like I was just treading water. And I was fortunate enough to start in an environment where we had city elections, very low turnout, all incumbents on the ballot. We weren't instituting a new voting system, implementing a new voting system, I should say. We're going into this, it's almost battle mode for the next 7 months. We have to get through this with a lot of unknowns right now. And so I will tell you that my plan will be to ramp up. It will probably ramp up a lot, because we can talk about different things like absentee ballots, which I think even if we don't change a thing, we're going to have a huge increase in absentee ballot requests. I can tell you just the phone calls we're getting in the office now. People, I think we've gotten 3 or 4 today, memory serves, just people wanting to get an absentee ballot for November. They're already calling about it. And so I'm looking for someone who can help hit the ground running and who has a good working knowledge of what we do, if that answers your question. That's the ideal candidate, I'll put it that way.
Do you have sort of a time frame on that? I mean, not a definite thing that you have to stick by, but just a time frame on rolling it out? And then I have one other question also, Mr. Davis.
Yeah, I mean, I would say sooner rather than later. I mean, I think 2 months from now would be too late. You know, I'm looking sometime probably hopefully in the next 30 days, give or take, have somebody ready to go.
Thank you. And then the only other question I have is with regard to working with Administrator Rogers and access, say, to the public, or access to various party leaders, or access to public questions or public information, particularly about the voting machine, you know, how to get the information about this new voting machine out there. But what is your general feeling on interacting with the public, giving information to the public, which I have found both you and Mr. Rogers to be very responsive. So, but I'm just curious for those listening, they may benefit from hearing your general opinions and outlook on that, if you wouldn't mind sharing it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think obviously there's going to be a lot of education and public facing education that's going to go into implementing a new voter system. Frankly, there's a lot of trepidation on behalf of some of our workers, particularly our older workers they're a little bit nervous about going to an all paper system. We're just a new system in general. There's going to be a great deal of education, particularly in the months of June and July, assuming everything holds and we can get back to some semblance of normalcy with regard to educating the public, and whether that is you know, having opportunities to come into a downtown West or a public library and look at the machine. We're going to be disseminating YouTube videos, using social media. And certainly if somebody wants to come in our office or they want to give us a call, we're glad to walk them through that stuff. I'll be honest with you, it's one of those things that every little bit of that we do, and I know that 2 other election officials in this room, they will attest to it. It makes election day a whole lot easier when people are comfortable with this. And we understand. I talked to the folks in Hamilton County. I talked to the folks in Davidson County when they've implemented new systems. There are going to be hiccups. It's just to be expected. But our job is to minimize those hiccups and make it as smooth as possible for the voter. And so we're going to we're going to look at all sorts of avenues to be able to get the word out, as we always have, continue to expand upon those.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Chairman, will you entertain a motion? I will. Mr. Chairman, I move the appointment of Assistant Administrator Chris Davis as Knox County Administrator of Elections effective May 30, 2020 to complete the current term of Clifford Rogers through the date of the Commission's reorganization meeting in April 2021.
I have a motion. Do you have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. Congratulations, Mr. Davis.
Thank you, sir.
Next order of business is consideration of appeals and rejected voter registration forms. Mr. Rogers.
I'm pleased to report we have no appeals.
Next order of business, we have no administrative reports. So that's-
Chair, can I take just one moment? I know y'all are in a hurry to get out. Can I have a moment of personal privilege? Talk for a second.
You're given a moment of personal privilege, Mr. Davis.
Thank you, sir. First off, thank you to the commission for having faith in me. I realize, every day, and I think I told Chairman Haggerty this at the last meeting, that when Cliff and I go out and do our jobs every day, we understand that it's you guys whose name is on the office, it's on the letterhead, it's on the website. Many people in the community, you are the election commission. So we're going to work hard to continue to make sure that everything is run smooth, everything's run by the book, and ultimately that our elections are run as smooth as possible. So thank you for putting trust and faith in me and the other folks in the office. The other thing I want to say, because I don't know if I'll get a chance to say this again, is I just want to thank Cliff Rogers for taking the, for having faith in me 7 years ago to take this job. And I just want to thank you for the last 7 years. I'm gonna miss seeing you every day. We got 8 weeks, I know, but we're separated right now by offices. And I will tell you, I echo everything that you guys said about Cliff Rogers. He's a good man. A good man. So, and he'll be on the, we'll be able to go to lunch occasionally, hopefully, when all this mess is over. And I've got your phone. We'll stay in touch. But
Once it's legal, we'll go eat.
once it's legal, all right. And yeah, and I hear you say you pay, and I'm fine with that.
I'll pay when it's legal.
All right, you heard that. I've got that on the record. All right. Good. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your sentiment. Order of business left is adjournment. Do I have a motion?
So the only other thing I would mention, do we need to go ahead and set a meeting in June And it was my understanding, I think Chris and I talked about this earlier, that we're looking at Thursday, June 18th, and Friday, June 19th as possibilities, because we do have, this is the big meeting to get ready for the August election and to talk about early voting sites, hours, and everything else that's we're going to have to deal with in the coronavirus climate. We really don't know what it is, but I think we're better off if we go ahead and get a meeting set. If we need to do something else, we can do it. So,
Certainly, and that was my recommendation. Earlier that week, we're going to be conducting Takio virtually. Normally, we'd be going down to Nashville, 4 or 5 of us, but given the current circumstances, we'll be doing that virtually. So my recommendation would be that 17th on Wednesday is the 50th day. Get past that write-in deadline, and then Thursday or Friday, if y'all are available.
This being your first recommendation, I hate to say no, so yeah, I'll take your recommendation.
I'm available June.
I can do the 18th, the 19th, a little trickier.
Just put it down on me.
Tammy, June 18,
It works for me.
Okay.
8:30.
yeah.
June 18th at 8:30.
Is there
I'll
any-
secure a room and let you know.
Before I say this again, is there any other business of this commission that needs to be taken up before we adjourn?
I did have a question. It always relates to what we do up in North Knoxville. What do we know about the availability of the convention center up there, Expo Center for August?
I know we talked to them and we gave them the dates. I don't know that we've had enough further conversations since probably January, since right after March.
We've asked for it. We've told them we will pay for it, and we've not heard back from Mr. Graham yet. But he is aware that we want it, we need it.
And just to be clear, we also gave them the October early voting dates for November as well. So.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. We are adjourned.